Thank you, sir, for such an informative lecture. Now this house is open for discussion. You all are invited to make this session an interactive one. Thank you.
Uh, in 2016, I came across a book known as Sapien. The name of the book is Sapien, written by one very well-known historian, uh, Mr. Yuval Noah Harari. And after many, many years, possibly, I came across a book which raised certain fundamental questions and rattled me. Today, after that reading, today again, so many facts and figures and his interpretations that again rattled me. Not only that, at the same time, Professor Srivastava, he has given certain solutions. We require solutions. What he uh, weaved through his lecture is that the tribal community is getting disintegrated. That is exactly the Sapien says that the consumerism that has fragmented the communities and now it is targeting the families. Even the family will not escape from this wrath. We shall be living as individuals. Anyway, so you have all heard it, and if you have got questions, you will be asking him. But sir, please, please.
No, after you.
One thing, during my first field season, it was in Yotmal district of Maharashtra. So there in my topo sheet, we always work in the field with a topo sheet. That is the guide for us. So I used to see many small villages, symbols of villages, which are, and it is written Tanda, T-A-N-D-A, Tanda. And when we started field work, then I could differentiate those Tanda people from the remaining village folks. Tandas are different. They used to be inhabited only by those people, and they are tribal in their nature. In some places they are called Lombardis, and most of them because it was a country setup, they were engaged in cultivation, very rocky, uh, very less productive land, strewn with boulders and pebbles, and they mainly used to grow two things. One is kardi, that is safola. The other is tuat dal, they say, that is the arhar dal. And from their dresses, particularly dress of the women folk, it was nowhere in other parts of Maharashtra I have seen. I have never come across those kind of headdresses particularly. So they used to call them ki they are from the Mathura or from Chittor, etc. Whether they really migrated from those areas to that, and possibly some of them they migrated to the adjacent Andhra Pradesh also, even in far south in Anandpur district of Andhra Pradesh. There also I have seen certain settlements, but those are not typical villages. Those are the government Awas Yojana जो होते हैं, उसमें जो building वगैरह बनता है, they were staying there. But it was very odd looking that they are staying in such buildings. Not it, they are, that imbalance is there. Those are not typical village dwellings. So my question is that whether they came down from Rajasthan to those parts of Maharashtra
Just little summation. You are absolutely right that tribes are disintegrating. Absolutely right. Unable to withstand the winds of change. They are disintegrating. And many of us fear that many of the cultural practices they have, the ways of living they have, the medicinal plants and their knowledge they have, all is going to disappear. We have in our discipline something called salvage studies. The word is called salvage study, which actually says that before this knowledge, the knowledge which people have cultivated for years, the knowledge they have and they pass down to their generation, before all this disappears, it must be recorded. And the recording cannot be done by living outside. We have to go live with them in their natural habitat, what geologists call in situ study. Be there with the people, and then only you will be able to understand. Because we are approaching tribal societies when they have already been mutilated. They are the earlier things are not there. What used to be. So people are also, this I've seen all over, people are also conscious of the fact that outsiders do not value their knowledge. They think the outsiders come and ridicule them. And so they try to hide this knowledge. But we have to be respectful towards them. We believe in the policy of that we are humble learners of their cultures. We have come to learn from you. And once people realize that you really mean it, believe me, the kind of knowledge you will be able to get. I was often amazed, if you just allow me to speak for, I was often amazed when I was doing my field work. I was very young. Actually, we say in our discipline that you should carry out your long field work when you are unmarried. Because once you are married, then you will have so many responsibilities to attend to and you will not be able to stay alone for a long time. In our discipline, it is said that the field work should not be for less than 1 year. And this should be uninterrupted. And we have scores of people who went to the field and emerged after several years. Anyway, I often used to get, impressed when someone would say, oh, I think, this is in Bikaner, say, I think it may be raining in Phalodi. And when the following days, Rajasthan Patrika will come, which is the name of a newspaper, I would read that there was rain in Phalodi. How did this fellow come to know? He is not a weather expert. How did he come to know? Then I also looked at those who trace the, a camel which has gone wayward. A camel lost its way, went somewhere. So they will go to the person who knows this knowledge. They are called Khoji. They are also called Pagi. Pagi means those who read the footprint. How do they? And it was amazing. It was amazing that they would know from the pug mark. Pug mark is now an English word. From the pug mark, they would know whether the camel is male or female. And now what I'm going to tell you was really surprising. They would also tell from the pug mark if it was of a female camel, whether she was in the family way, whether she was pregnant or not. From the pug mark, she would say, amazing, how will they do it? So because I was living with them, and I wanted to learn all this. And of course, in the field, I learned so many things. It was camel driving to anything. When you are young, you can do many things. So I learned from them many things living with them. And they told me, we can't teach you. You have to be with us to see. And in my own work, which later on was published in the form of a book, I made a distinction, building upon what others have said, between linguistic knowledge and non-linguistic knowledge. Linguistic knowledge is one which is conveyed through words, and non-linguistic word knowledge is one which is conveyed through your expressions, through gestures, through knowledge which is non-sentential, meaning thereby it is not given in sentences. So the first thing is that these communities are very knowledgeable. We need to record it. My humble submission would be that please advise your researchers when they go, they should write what is called field diary. It will serve two purposes. Your language will improve. Language will also improve. And the other is, you will be able to intellectualize it in the evening when you are home, okay, before the dinner is served. And we all know that you should not sleep 2 hours after eating. It's only after 2 hours you should sleep. So, and that write your experiences. We tell our student, write your experiences, not necessarily in English. Write in Hindi, in any other language, because you will be able to establish a rapport with that. Now, many of the tribal communities, the last point, many of the tribal communities are quite aware of the fact that their societies are disintegrating, their cultures are disintegrating. So they are making extraordinary efforts to revitalize it, to revive it. And unsurprising, many of the educated tribals are reading the anthropological accounts to know how their ancestors lived. And this is one of the main causes of the rise in one of the main effects in the rise of tribal ethnicity. Okay, the people are becoming conscious of their presence. Okay, of these things. You have to safeguard your own knowledge. Now, coming to the other thing about this Tanda. See what happens I can take the example of Rajasthan. These are small settlements, usually outside the village. In English, the word, hamlet can be used. They're hamlets. They are generally people of a single caste, single community. They are the people of same kin group, and they're all living together. And they live in Tanda, or they live in Rajasthan, they're called Dhani. They live because of one or the other reason. Maybe they may be keeping animals, or they may be doing certain things, which may not be possible within the village. For example, washing of clothes or so. So somewhere, living outside. And it's very interesting to see the relationship between these settlements like Dhani and Tanda and the main village. Now this question is very important, which Sir has asked, about how did they come? How did the migration take place? About Lambadis you mentioned. Many of us say that these Lambadis had their origin in Rajasthan. From there they moved over a length of time. And don't be surprised if you come to know that these tribal groups in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, people who are called particularly vulnerable tribal groups, PVTG, they were earlier called primitive tribes like Onge, Jarva, Sentinel and Great Andamanis. They all came to these islands from Africa at different points of time. People have been moving, and they have always been looking for better places to live. Now, even now, you see, look at your own behavior. We also want to move out. Most of the middle classes have children who study abroad, who settle down abroad. One of the major problems of the contemporary nuclear families in metropolises is that the parents are left all alone. children are away. People migrated in the past because of these greener pastures. They are migrating today. They're migrating today because of the same thing. And therefore, change is imminent. They say change is as much a fact of life as it is orderly persistence. And we have to look at this. Now, how this migration occurs, once again, we require studies. And it will not be possible unless we live with the people. Not everything is available in the archives. We'll have to pay attention to the oral history of people. Yeah, sorry, I took a long time.
Then there is always this, what you discussed at length, that contradiction between the development and tribal rights, their forest rights, land rights, everything. So now the perspective is changing, and we are also trying to come to terms with these problems. And lately some new government policies has come up. I think my colleague Dr. Joyesh Bagchi is in a better position to talk. Would you please? That
Nothing. Just
local
9
area
crore
development.
has shifted from when on?
Right from the beginning, when these development programs
Well,
started.
1876, 18th century.
Right. Over a length of time, they have been moving. You see, it is said that.
How do you
You know-
estimate it? 9 crore?
Well, these are rough estimates, but certain things are quite well known. Number one, 40% of the people who have been displaced are the tribals. Another 40% are those who are from other communities. And moreover, the distinction between tribal and non-tribal is very fluid.
Luminous.
Those who are tribal today, who are tribes, may become scheduled tribe or may not become. Both the things are there. And then there is another category. One is called displaced person, the other is called PAP. People affected by project affected people, and their number is not known. These are rough estimate to say, just to say that there has been a lot of migration of people, or people are made to leave their traditional habitats, and where will they go? Earlier, when the British used to take over these areas, they would go to unsurveyed areas. So this area has been surveyed, so they'll go to unsurveyed area. But those unsurveyed areas were also surveyed. So they had to move over a length of time. After all, there's a category called, which I'm sure all of you know, called criminal tribes. British created it. When the act was repealed in 1952, they were called ex-criminal tribes. And today they are called denotified communities. In Hindi, they are called Vimukta Jati. Denotified because the notification which came, which actually made them criminal, this has been repealed. Now, if you look at these people, that yes, at one time they indulged in looting, they indulged in snatching. Yes, but why? That's an important thing. There was a work which was done by P.K. Bhaumik on the Lodhas. It says very clearly it happened because they were practicing shifting cultivation. They were removed because the forests were taken over. Where will they go? They came to the cities. Please remember that if you are skilled, you may be able to get. Now, these hunting and food gathering societies, they are very different. And from hunting and food gathering to food production, it took thousands of years.
Now, do we have any hunting gathering? We don't have.
Of course, we have the Andaman tribals.
Only the Andaman. Besides that,
Yeah, and some
hunting gathering.
sentinels, of course, they are hunters.
No, I think in Andaman mainly, since it is an isolated community, they are still primitive.
Yes.
Whereas the migration in the entire world actually started from Africa, Central Africa, and they moved all along the edges of the continents, and probably because of that they were in a position to mix and different cultures were developed. But whereas the African, as you say, the isolated ones somehow reached Andaman,
Yes.
and they were isolated from the entire community as a whole.
Yes.
And that's why we have that same set of people's
Yes.
origin. I
Man,
would say
many of the hill tribes also,
Yeah,
they
that's
continue to have their own ways of living. Of course, none of the communities, you are absolutely right, none of the communities are isolated. They are having a relationship with the outside world. And I've seen this. In Rajasthan, for example, I've seen that these tribal people bring honey, they bring medicinal plants
For the market.
for, but for their patrons, they'll bring give to. And interesting thing is that the shamanic treatment, witchcraft, that kind of a magical treatment, this was provided by many of these hill tribes to the caste people also. So sense of interrelationship is there. And you are absolutely right that the islandic communities have remained isolated, and they continue with the same thing. The effect of outside world has been less. But I also want to tell you that the extent of change is very fast. This a university, I think in this called Indira Gandhi Tribal University in Amarkantak. So the vice chancellor was giving a lecture. They went to a Baiga village. Baigas are in Madhya Pradesh. They are the ones, Baiga and Gond. They live together. They are the Baigas are the shifting cultivators. They called it beaver cultivation. So in one of his lectures, he said that they went to the Baiga land, to the village. So they asked the people, what are your problems? They thought people would tell them that the problem is of land, the problem is of road, the problem is this, the problem is that. So one boy came forward and said, sir, the problem is there is no mobile tower here. There is no mobile tower. And the second thing he told me was that another person came and said, we want geo tower. Now this shows the impact of change. After all, television has brought about a tremendous change in the thinking of people. You see, the images of affluence come to your doorstep. Tell me any program which is focusing on the destitutes. You look at all these soap operas which we watch every evening. There are people who are very wealthy. Sometimes I ask my wife, please try to find out what would they do. Women are always decked up, wearing new saris, jewelry, even at home. These are the images. Now, someone who has never been to the metropolis doesn't know. But thinks that perhaps they live like this, which is not the reality. After all, it's all imaginary. These changes which are coming, and these changes are very fast. Very, very fast. I remember when the last Kumbh Mela took place, there was a photograph. I think it was published in one of the English dailies. The photograph was of a sannyasi, a sadhu, a Naga sadhu, wearing the body smeared with ashes, is standing just opposite McDonald
Yes,
with a mobile phone.
yes.
You know?
Sir, our Director General Dinesh Gupta sir, he wants to join.
Yes.
Sir, you are not fully audible. Now it is audible, sir.
नमस्कार सर, नमस्कार. कैसे हैं आप? हाँ. अच्छा. Yeah. How are you? Good. Thanks. Yes. Yeah. I'm so happy. I really enjoyed, and the discussion is going on. Oh, I'm so happy. Yes, 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 yes. I was just suggesting, I'll in fact suggest to Mukhopadhyay Saab that if I could get a cassette of this, I'll get it transcribed, this entire lecture. I have this facility in my office. You also have this facility. I'll get it transcribed, convert it into some kind of a paper, which can be kept in your file for reference. Yeah.
Sir, it is being high definition videography is going on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Of the entire proceeding.
Yes.
We are recording it,
Huh.
and it will be on GSI website.
Yes.
But corner and window it will be there.
Yeah, yeah.
So subsequently, any particular colleague want to have full details
Yes.
about this, he can have it.
Yes, yes, yes.
It's nice, sir. To see you
But
there.
I'll see you. I'll see you. I'll come to your office. I'll come to your office on Tuesday. Monday night I'll be leaving Delhi. So Tuesday I'll come and see you. I'll,
Tuesday I am in Delhi.
anytime then I'm in Calcutta for some more day.
Wednesday I will be waiting for you.
Yeah, Wednesday I'll come. I'll come.
And I request you, I think you have given the reprints of the paper.
I'll give some more.
I also wanted some, get us all can prepare it up library.
Yes. Yes, I'll do that.
State also so we can prepare in our library.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
So once again,
Tha- I'm so grateful to you. My gratitude to you. I mean, you are the prime mover. Because of you, this meeting has been arranged. Yeah.
I'm very happy to be part of that. Though I'm away.
Thanks, sir. Thanks.
Please continue.
Right.
Continue here.
Yes.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Bye bye.
So I would like to place that as Mukhopadhyay was telling about the Lambadis of Maharashtra. If you entirely see those areas further south also, in Andhra Pradesh also there is a
Yeah, of course.
dwelling of Andhras, and there is a district in Mehboobabaad which is entirely of the Lambadi population. And further in Tamil Nadu also you find certain effects of the Lambadi
Yes.
as well as the Kutch.
Yes.
The Kathiawar community is also
Yes,
there.
yes.
And they have intermingled with the locals in such a way that their language is a mixture of Tamil, Gujarati, Rajasthani. Similarly in Andhra also you
Yes.
find the intermingling of all
Yes,
these
yes,
languages
yes,
as and when they have migrated.
Yes.
And they have mixed with the local population because they are generally traders as well as cattle sellers. And that's why you find a lot of camels also in such areas where camels were not known during the earlier days.
Sir, one more question, sir. Is
Actually,
meta-
just to, actually, we are all, we say, blotting papers. Blotting papers have disappeared. Blotting papers in the sense that we pick up. We pick up cultural practices. And most of these things happen unconsciously. And they become a part of our behavior. And then we bring about a change in our ways, in our eating habits, in our living patterns. I mean, one of the things which we say is you should look at your own life as an object of study. This we call it sociology of the self.
Sir, this metallurgical nation, country, does this have any existence in these tribal societies?
Well, you see, one of the very, very good questions you have asked. Very good. Actually, the people who have come in contact with the outside world, they have some understanding of nation, they have some understanding of the political system, especially those communities which have large number of educated people. Otherwise, the nation is their own self. I remember we carried out a piece of fieldwork in Bagachak. And I remember one man coming and telling me, when you go back, please tell Mr. Rajiv Gandhi. Rajiv Gandhi was the Prime Minister, about our problems. His conception was that I may be meeting Rajiv ji every day. That kind of thing. The scale of the entire thing is not. That is why we tell our students, whenever you go for field work, never promise anything. People may come and say, can you help us in job? Because we are interested in data, we are interested in good repo, we promise, which is not good. I say we are the most powerless people. In fact, Mukhopadhyay Sahib knows, I am the most powerless person. Do you know this? Why? Because I am a custodian of the rules. I can't help anyone. Do you think I can give a job to anyone? No, not at all. So that kind of a powerlessness has to be conveyed, and how rules are superior. Many of us don't do this kind of a thing, which is important. Many of these hill communities, what we have seen, they have a very close relationship with their environment. They're also the protectors of the environment. But there's another aspect, is this concept of divinity living in their environment. Say, for example, the gods and goddesses. Like one of the reasons why these Kond, the tribals in Niyamgiri. So they said, we don't want to leave it because our God is here. And I remember in 2013, the judge said that you have no right to comment on their belief. This is their belief. They hold it. They believe in this. So for them, this is the word. Mal Pahariyas were shifted to the land. Houses were built. They said they are living on in the forest, and they are spoiling it, they are destroying it, so bring them down. Houses were provided. And when the rules were relaxed, they went back. They went back to the forest, and they were asked, why? You were given cement houses. Why? No, how can we leave our gods and goddesses? Our spirits are there. After all, as I said, that you require time for bringing about a change. If suppose I fall ill, I may always say it is because of the wrath of the gods and goddesses. So from that thinking in terms of the germ theory, in terms of other eventuality, is a different thing. So we have to have a more two-way approach, and also proceeding, in a very respectful manner.
Sir, anyway, first of all, I must thank you for such a wonderful discourse on this anthropological aspect, and especially for geologists who are working in Geological Survey of India, to sensitize them. I went through the material which you have given, and I was finding that India has a wide range of tribal population, starting from, as you mentioned, in Lakshadweep. There is one kind of tribal community who are very advanced, and one side it is Sentinelese who are practically completely isolated. So how do a person who goes to field doing field work, how do they cope up with this kind of an extreme?
The first thing is that tribe is not a homogeneous category. Meaning thereby that you don't expect all of them to be having the same kind of things. There are tribes which are great in number. Gond, Santhal. They are in different states, spread over a number of states. Some of these tribal groups are even in Bangladesh, Orans, for example. So they have a large distribution. On the other hand, are the tribes which during the fifth five-year plan were called primitive tribes. The term was dropped later. As I told you, the word primitive is derogatory, is demeaning, so we don't use the word primitive. In fact, at that time, a very important civil servant, an anthropologist and an IAS, Dr. Bhupendra Singh, he suggested that let's not call them primitive tribes. Rather, we should call them primary tribes. This is the term he suggested. Of course, later on, the word was changed to, as I said, PVTG, particularly vulnerable tribal group. Now, this word is very important, vulnerable, larger vulnerability. If you have followed the recent episode which took place in Sentinel, if you have read it closely, one of the things which has come up is that if we go there, outsiders go there, they are bound to be affected more by the kind of germs, the kind of viruses, the kind of odor, the smell which we have. This will be harmful to them. After all, please don't forget that thousands of Andamanis disappeared because of influenza, which I think is a common flu, because of measles, because they did not have any immunity. They have been living in isolation. So there are different kinds of communities. This concept came. The outcome of this was that we started identifying the so-called primitive tribes, now particularly vulnerable tribes, and they number 75. 75 communities are there. Now, within that, there are also diminutive tribes. These terms are not administrative terms, but they are used. Minor tribes. Diminutive tribes are those which have very small population. You know the great Andamanis. At one time there were 10 tribal groups, great Andamanis. Today only 3 tribal groups are left, and their population now is 75. This is the most recent information. And when Redcliffe Brown, who went to conduct their study, there were hundreds. The death rate, mortality rate, was more. They are diminutive, and they have very specific problem. Sentinels, how many are these? There's no consensus. Newspapers say that there may be anywhere between 50 and 100. Last census counted 15 people only, but this was a head count. They may be inside the forest and you do not know. So they're really very small. And questions which are asked, especially by biologists, is a small community having mating relationship. For example, 200 people marrying within. What about the recessive homozygous characteristics? The diseases coming up. How they've been able to live so well. Sometimes people ask me that, well, what is the source of salt? Well, the answer would be, well, they eat the natural thing, whatever is available. And they are very healthy. If you've seen the pictures, very, very healthy. Longevity, we do not know. How long do they live? But of course, there are accidents, snake bites may be there, fall may be there, all these things may be. So, against this backdrop, what happened was that we started rethinking about development. We said that we should think tribe-wise, the concept of micro-level planning. There can't be a plan for all the tribal communities because each one is at a different stage of cultural contact. We call it acculturation. Different. Look at the students from northeastern part who are studying in Delhi University. Very different. Compared to those who are still there in Arunachal Pradesh, for example, many of the communities have not been studied there. So you have to think in terms of specific tribes. Therefore, the plans have to be prepared keeping in mind their thing. And whatever change has to be brought about, it has to be done partnership and slowly and gradually. Look at, you see, one thing which anthropology teaches you, first of all, look at yourself, then look at others. Tell me, can you change the habits of your parents and grandparents? No, not at all. I still remember, I give you my own example, I still remember, when we changed the pot in the washroom, okay? And, the American style, the sitting kind of a pot. There was protest from my grandparents. Although they were suffering from osteoarthritis. And you keep on telling them, osteoarthritis means you should not squat. Okay? But they wouldn't. They wouldn't. Eating habits, for example. Gradually. And I, personally, I believe in this sociology of this self. Look into yourself before you look at the others. How you change. When you came to work in Delhi, let's say you came from Bengal, work in Delhi, what you saw, how you reacted to this. After all, you also brought about a change in yourself. The smell of fish may be repelling, but then it becomes a fragrance. Huh? So that's how, and that would apply to others as well. That was the reason why Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru said, I'll give you that piece, short piece. It's